This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
I'm Eric.
And today is what, Will?
It is Manic Monday.
And we're not going to talk about Kim Jong-un for like 5 extra minutes this time. All right. Okay. This is our second attempt to record this because the first time we tried streaming this, there was a weird thumbnail, and I said the guy looked like Kim Jong-un, but obviously he's not on America's Got Talent or The Masked Singer or any of those types of shows. Anyways, why are we here today on 420?
Well,
again, it's not legal in the state that I'm in, so.
Yeah, it's unfortunate you can't play Fire Emblem in your state, but if you're in a state where you can play Fire Emblem legally, it's Fire Emblem's 30th birthday. Yeah.
Yes! Originally released on 4/20/1990, and now it is 4/20/2020. Lots of 20s. All right.
There's a lot of 20s.
It's the 30th year of Fire Emblem existing.
Yeah.
The first game was called what, Will?
Very first game? I don't know, man. You put me on the spot.
All right, forget Fire Emblem. What's important today?
Well, you had 2 different names for it last
Listen,
episode.
listen, dude. What important announcement do you have?
Oh, so I have 2 for the quick topics. So one is congratulations to our boy, Installation00. He's over 50,000 subscribers.
And you should go subscribe too.
Mm-hmm. He's got that cheat code of a voice.
And he just did a video proving that the Warthog run could exist on a Pillar of Autumn. It was like
that was actually really interesting.
3 times the size of the actual Pillar of Autumn. Anyways, go watch that video. It's good. And also, watch the 8-minute video on his thing that leads you back to our channel, because that's important too. Anyways, the second thing. All right. Second thing, we got videos coming out with Nathan Sifu Gaming next week. Shout out to Nathan Sifu. He just surpassed like 500 subscribers a couple weeks ago. Go subscribe to his channel too. But
unfortunately,
we have a Monday video coming out with him where we're discussing games coming in May. And there's going to be a bunch missing because we recorded this video like 3 weeks ago. And I was like, there won't be new games coming in May. Nah.
So naive, Chris.
Pod Racer doesn't exist. Nah. So if you watch that video, take it with a grain of salt. There's going to be some stuff missing that's coming out in May that we didn't cover.
I still like the games I picked as the ones I'm excited for.
Yeah, like he picked My Little Pony.
Well, obviously, yes.
And Hello Kitty Cruisers, and so good job.
Thanks,
don't bag Hello Kitty Cruisers. That's like some AAA gameplay right there. Just saying.
It's also like the most expensive Wii U game. Anyways,
it transcends the genre and also the platform.
Yeah.
So
man, I cried playing the game. The story really got me of Hello Kitty Cruisers. Whew.
Today, Fire Emblem turned 30. I think Eric already stole my thunder and gave that away. So it's 30 years old today. All right, so I'm gonna run you through. Not with a sword, but with all the information on the Fire Emblem series. The original Fire Emblem game came out on the Famicom in Japan only, 4/20/1990. I think I already said that. We're going to say it again. It was originally called Fire Emblem Dark Dragon and the Sword of Light, but it's been retconned to be Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light to match the DS title. Okay?
It's weird because that happens a lot with titles that come over here and have to change the name from the Japanese title. And I don't really see much of a difference between those 2 titles. I'm not sure why they did that.
I don't know.
I mean, Marth did not wear pants in the first one. He just had that like skirt and the like Greek sandals.
You mean Mars? So. You mean Mars?
Mars. That's right, Mars. Sorry, yeah, different character.
Since the original release of Fire Emblem on 4/20/1990, there have been 15 mainline releases, not including Fire Emblem Warriors, and also not including Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE. Okay? All right.
But including Heroes, because that's clearly mainline and number 1.
No. Well, you can leave. You can leave the podcast.
No, I support Will. Keeping it in.
You can leave the podcast.
No!
Chris wields too much power.
We stand New Year Camilla in this podcast.
Oh no!
All the Camilla alts.
Oh my god.
Summer Camilla. No.
Summer Camilla.
Listen, Shadow Dragon and whatever Blade of Light, the retcon name, came out 4/20/1990. Probably changed the whole genre because before that you had Famicom Wars, which was essentially It was like Fire Emblem, but the units dying didn't really matter as much, and it was like tanks and planes and people fighting with guns. Definitely not cool like swords and shields and axes and lances and horses and ballistas and all that good stuff. Second game was Gaiden in 1992. All right, and just so you know,
Gaiden?
No. Fire Emblem Gaiden.
Oh, I'm just kidding.
And by the way, the sales for the first game just topped over 329,000 units sold. The second game, 324,000 units sold. And these are all Shozo Kaga's. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Shozo Kaga's.
Yeah, Shozo Kaga. Yep.
And he was like the godfather. Well, not the godfather. The father of Fire Emblem at the time. All right. He kind of came up with this, and I think he was like in college with a couple of his friends when they entered the Nintendo space and created Fire Emblem. But then we had Mystery of the Emblem coming out in 1994, and this was the best-selling Fire Emblem game at the time at 776,000 copies sold. And it was the first Super Famicom Fire Emblem game. And it was a remake of the first game with an added story on the second half. And if you had played the first game, they let you skip the first half of this game altogether and just play the second half because it was a new story. But what's the weird thing that it took to get on a Super Famicom cartridge is they actually cut like 3 levels and 5 characters. Yeah. So in order to squeeze double the game of a Famicom game, they actually cut some levels and some characters out. So people don't actually consider this version of the game the definitive version of Shadow Dragon, which is interesting. I think there's actually a hack to add those back in an emulator state. So if you really wanted to play the full Mystery of the Emblem, there are like ways to do so. The fourth game, as I put out the first time we tried to cover this subject, Genealogy of the Holy War. That's a mouthful, okay?
Yeah.
This is a game where the maps are like 5 or 6 CRT screens to get across them. Like, imagine you're on an old CRT screen, square box, right? And you have to cross
what is that?
Like 6 different loading screens. Not loading screens. Nothing loads in cartridges. You have to cross like 6 areas of that CRT to get to the end of the map. Like there's like multiple levels on one map essentially.
Yeah, each chapter had multiple objectives. And then on top of that, it had a very
Why am I not showing gameplay?
Very ambitious
show some gameplay
story. Yeah. I'll throw that up, but yeah, it had a very deep story, like a very character-driven story. There's, people joke that like it steals, or Game of Thrones steals from it because dragons come back as a plot point, like noble houses and strife is a plot point. Like, there's a big plot twist. That's a big plot point. It's a great game. It's really fun, and it's like, if you like that old anime, like 80s anime style, like that aesthetic is just like in this game.
Yeah, this is a really great English translated game. Like so far, none of these games have made it to the States. I just want to reiterate, none of these games made it stateside in this timeline we're in right now. We're on Earth Prime. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not. It hasn't come to this timeline yet, but yeah, and it's like if you want to play it, you got to emulate it. But there is a really great English translation out there
on serenesforest.net. Go get it.
Yeah.
All right, and then so after they made this game, and it was like so ambitious, and the maps were so large. And it sold almost 500,000 copies, so it was relatively successful in the Fire Emblem franchise. More successful than both of the Famicom releases, the Super Famicom release. They're like, all right, let's take this formula, let's shrink it down, add more chapters, and make it a more streamlined story without all of this extra stuff going on with the romantic partners, the kids, the extra generations. Like, we're gonna make Thracia 776. But we're also going to make it really freaking hard.
Yeah, it's hard. This was the last game that Shozo Kaga did, and he did a lot of stuff that never came back in any of the other games. Like, permanent fog of war, but the big one was the fatigue meter. So you couldn't
fatigue meters are the worst.
Yeah, you couldn't use, like, the characters that you liked all the time. You really had to, like, balance, like, your army out. Also, capturing is a way to get items and like stuff. You had to capture enemies and like
that came back by the way.
That did go back. Yeah, that eventually did come back, but
in Fates.
it wasn't well received. Yeah, at least in this one.
It was kind of a weird mechanic too, because there's only one character on each of the different Fates paths that's allowed to steal and capture.
That, yeah.
And then you get like these like generic no-name units that you can convince to join your team. It's like, I'm gonna capture you.
Good.
Now join my team. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah, whereas in Thracia, it's like you captured them, you took all their stuff, and then you would shoot them out into the map, and they would just evaporate. Like, it's like,
exactly.
We're done with you. You don't exist anymore.
We took all your clothes. Now it's shameless. You're shameful and naked.
Like
all right, listen.
Skyrim item strats for sure.
So, Thracia 776 did not sell very well compared to the other Fire Emblem games. It only sold 145,000 copies. So think about that. The first two games, 300,000+ each. This one did not even sell half of that.
Yeah.
Shozo Kaga left and produced the well-known but also sued to the ground by Nintendo Tirnanog games, which would be the I'm trying to remember. It was originally called Emblem Saga, and it ended up becoming
Tearing
it was
Saga.
it was either Tearing or
Saga,
Tearing. I don't know which. It was that one, and then there was also ones I believe sort of the Barrack Saga. I think Barrack.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Berwick?
I'm not like a professional Fire Emblem YouTuber or anything. I'm just an enthusiast. Of the series, but like.
But in between that and now, he hadn't released anything until he released Vistaria Saga. Yeah,
Vistaria Saga, which is interesting because it's like, if we're going to segue into that, it plays exactly like Genealogy and Thracia, which is weird because like those games, they're fun to play, but they're definitely, you can tell, it's like, oh, these are games that came out like 30, 25 years ago. But like Vistaria Saga plays exactly like they do. So it's like, okay. Yeah.
I think he made this in RPG Maker, which is pretty impressive.
He did. Yeah. Yeah,
so,
I mean, because it was basically him and like one or two other people. So it's like, like really shout out to like that, like, because he very clearly loves like this style of game, like Fire Emblem style games. Yeah.
The Kaga Saga begins. I love it. Good job, Mangs. All right.
Mangs. Shout out to Mangs. Love his content. But yeah, what came after Thracia? What happened? Like, why did it not come over to America? That sounds fascinating.
Who knows? But then they released Binding Blade, which still didn't come to America. After Shozo Kaga left, the father of Fire Emblem is gone from the series. They were planning to make a Fire Emblem 64 game. Okay,
that
was next. And it never came out because it was going to go on the N64 DD. And Shozo Kaga had a lot of plans for it. It was going to be called Fire Emblem Maiden of Darkness. That was the subtitle.
Sounds cool.
And they didn't end up using any of the characters from it except for like 2, I want to say. They reused the character sprites for what eventually became Fire Emblem Binding Blade on the Game Boy Advance. And the person who took over the series and has been part of the series since is Toru Narahiro. I think I said that right. If I said it wrong, just correct me in the comments. We'll move on, okay? But it was called The Binding Blade, and that is actually the game where Roy comes from in Super Smash Bros. Melee.
Yeah.
And that game never got translated to English by Nintendo officially, so people are like, who's this Roy guy?
Yeah, and I think it was definitely through Melee that a lot of us Westerners discovered Fire Emblem. And, people are like, oh, Martha and Roy, that's really interesting. And it was really like, if I recall, it was because Sakurai like noticed like the attention these characters were getting, and I believe Fire Emblem 7, the Blazing Sword, or just Fire Emblem as we know it, was in development, and it was during the development cycle where it's like, you know what, these guys are so popular, we should release this in the States and see how it does. And that's how, we got an English patch, or not patch, but like an English version of Fire Emblem, the Blazing Sword.
Do you know why the Blazing Sword looks and has a lot of similar characters to Binding Blade?
Why? Please enlighten.
It actually isn't, and it was actually, from what I understand, it was not actually meant to be a prequel to the other game. They actually got wind that they were going to be making another Fire Emblem GBA game, and they're like, oh, okay, we'll just reuse the engine we have, we'll do some minor tweaks. Like, yeah, and you got to have that done in less than a year. And they're like, what? Yeah. So like they're like, you know what? Nope. We're just gonna make this a prequel, reuse sprites, kind of tweak them a little bit, and boom, game out in less than a year.
That makes sense. I mean, it's pretty good. And if that's true, that makes sense with the story, because shout out to a really good Fire Emblem YouTuber named Mecha. He does, and I loved the story as a kid.
So did I. It was amazing.
7. But Mecha like goes through it like story beat by story beat and shows like, oh, these things really don't make sense and like don't work. And it's kind of like the Binding Blade's kind of like shoehorned in, and it's like, oh, that makes sense if it was supposed to be another game. And then they're like, oh, Roy, we got to connect it to Roy somehow. Here, it's about his dad, Elwood, and his friends Hector and Lynn. Like, yeah.
There you go. And then there's the 10-chapter tutorial that you could literally not play and the game would still make sense.
Yeah. but like you couldn't get like overpowered units. Like if you didn't play the tutorial, like Sane and Kent wouldn't be great. But man, what a great game! Like, but then after that we got the other Game Boy Advance.
Before we segue into the next game,
yeah,
Sacred Stones.
Oh yeah, all right.
Before we do that, Fire Emblem, the first one to release in the U.S., they actually don't have official U.S. sales on it, but it just says
Weird.
This game was successful in the States. I'm like, how do you not have sales figures?
Okay.
But anyway, so in Japan it only sold 265,000. So they're still on like a downward swing in Japan during this time period, which is so weird to me to think, because that was when it hit its stride. I felt like when it was released in the US and they had tons of sales. It's kind of interesting. The Shozo Kaga version of Fire Emblem was more popular in Japan than all of the games that came after him, until we get to, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, a certain game that saved the franchise. Yeah.
But the reason I found out about Fire Emblem, this is kind of bizarre. So what happened with me was I was at a swim meet in like middle school, and I was friends with this other guy who was friends with this kid in the stands who was like straight up Japanese, and he's playing this game on his Game Boy Advance. I'm like, what the heck is this game? And so I sat next to him, like trying to figure out what it was, and he goes, "It's Fire Emblem." And I'm like, "What is Fire Emblem?" He goes, "Here, you try it." So he hands me it. He doesn't even tell me what to do. He just says, "Just try it." So I'm like, okay. So I was like looking at the units, and it's just like a bunch of little figures that, like they're this big on a Game Boy Advance screen. I'm like, that guy looks kind of cool. So I just like started picking them, not based on like levels or weapons or anything, just picked them. And I started playing through it. And I realized after I moved Bartray, I was like, he doesn't have any weapons. So I ended up, my whole squad died. And I was like, distraught. And he's like, yeah, you're not going to play this game anymore. So he took back his Game Boy. And I was like left with this image in my mind, like, this game is amazing. So I was like trying to figure out where the heck it was. Eventually my birthday was coming around, and I was like, I need this now. So I like went to Target, and I was like, do you guys have this? And they're like, what? So he's like going through the Game Boy section, like trying to find, he's like, I don't know what this is. Like looking like he hands me Final Fantasy, and I was like, that's not it. So he goes,
to the F though.
Going through again. Hands me Lord of the Rings The Third Age, which is kind of like Fire Emblem, but it's not. And I was like, nope, that's not it either. And so we're going through again, and it's like, that's it right there. And it was like, there's like one copy left. The box was beat to crap. And he was like, okay. So they ring it up, and it was like $10, because this was like a couple years, maybe a year or two after Fire Emblem came out. And I took it home, and I played through Lynn's story, and I thought the game was over. And I was like, this was amazing. And then it's like, okay, now pick your next character, and you could choose between Lynn and Elwood. And I was like, what? This redheaded guy's back? And I mean, that was my whole story. But anyways, I was like so.
No, keep going, Chris. I'm enthralled.
I was so excited. I mean, it was like literally the greatest thing ever. I had to tell everybody about it. All my friends, just Eric.
Yeah, well, that's how I learned. That's how I learned from it. Is Chris was raving about this game, and I remember I found it at GameStop, and I like picked up a copy. And I like played it, and I still remember playing that and how like the story affected me and how I like loved the characters. And like I didn't really understand it the first time I played through it, although I do remember playing through the whole game and just being like, wow, that was amazing. That was like a book, and I didn't even do like half of the supports or anything that like the
I didn't even know what supports were for.
Yeah, I discovered them on accident, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I'm getting these like little extra scenes of like the characters like interacting, and that was what really drew me to it. Was like the characters and like the weapon triangle and the permadeath. That was like a huge thing for me because it was like, oh, like a character dies and then that's it. Like they're gone for good.
Yeah, permadeath.
You don't
It was
get
like
them back. Yeah,
it made me
And
emotional.
yeah, it did, and I would restart. Like I would restart. I'd turn off my Game Boy because I was like, well, replaying that level. I can't want to have
I
that
can't lose
person die.
Matthew.
Yes, I can't lose. Yeah.
But
Man, it was
honestly,
so good. Yeah.
the one thing I remember about Fire Emblem that threw me off about every other game afterwards was if you just turned the power off, it would still save.
Yeah, it would remember what you did.
I couldn't believe it.
And the thing too was like weapon durability. Like it was such a fascinating concept. It's like, well, I can't just use like the rapier forever; it'll break. Or the wolf. It was the wolf bale. It was Hector's axe. I was
like 20
man,
uses.
that thing was broken. That thing was broken. And then it's like it broke. Like, but it's so good. How could it break? Yeah.
Or the Manicotti.
Manicotti. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Give me some flashbacks. But yeah, I played that game to death, and I replayed it like a couple years ago, and it holds up. It's really fun, and it was a lot of people's first introduction to the series, and
I believe it
really
was that guy's
highlighted,
first introduction.
Yeah, it was
to the
my
series
first.
too.
And
oh, awesome! Yeah,
it was also because of Chris. Like, you gotta play this, and he got it for me.
Yep. So that's where we're at, and then I was like so yearning for more Fire Emblem, and then Nintendo gave it to me. They released the Sacred Stones.
The Sacred
They
Stones.
answered your letter.
I remember being so excited, and I was like, oh, it's a whole nother story and like a whole different world. And like I interestingly enough, the Sacred Stones like was more gameplay focused, and it was like I didn't realize until years later people like, oh, that's like the easy one because you can grind and like you can make units whatever you want them to be. But I didn't care as like a kid. I had so much fun playing the Sacred Stones. Like it has some of my favorite maps in the series.
The story's a lot deeper than people give it credit for because like
it's like deceptively dark too.
It is.
It's like yeah, it's like when you're playing it, it's like wow, haha, and then like I remember I replayed it in college. And I was like, wow, that's kind of messed up. Like, some things in the story, that's kind of messed up. Like
the Demon King has possessed your BFF.
Or, like, not even that. Like some of the villains.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like, I was like, I loved him as a kid because he was, like, crazy. And then you, like, listen to the things that he says. I'm like,
ooh.
Did he just, like... Because there's, like, a whole line where he's, like, talking to Erica, and he's like, I'm going to string you up like a bird. And it's like, what the... That's messed up. Like, and that's in this kid's game. But just the whole Orson like subplot, like that was messed. That's dark.
They kept
like,
his wife alive.
Yeah, where she's like a rotting corpse, and he's like, yeah, that's my wife, and he's just crazy. I'm like, that's messed up. Like that's dark.
Yeah.
But that was such a good game. I love the Sacred Stones. Like, go play it. Like, it's really fun. Yeah.
And that one actually sold a little bit less in Japan even than the first one, the Fire Emblem, Fire Emblem 7, which would be Blazing Sword, which is, you know, Blazing Sword on 420, right? Anyways, the next game to come out was the reason I got a GameCube, Path of Radiance.
Yeah, Path of Radiance. One of the best GameCube games, honestly. It's so good. It's like a visual novel. And it is so deep and like so well developed. And I remember like thinking the graphics are so good. And now when I go back, you know, it's very like polygony. But I was like, I didn't care. Like, oh man, I loved it. Loved the story, the characters, the supports, the world. Like, it's a great game, and it's very rare now. Unfortunately, like they didn't print.
It's actually not that rare. So I've been looking into this for a while now. So it's not that rare. It's not even that it is rare. It's that the demand is so high.
Yeah,
and nobody wants to part with it. So the supply available.
Well, they should. It's a great game. Yeah.
It's begging for a remake.
Yeah.
It's literally begging for a remake. Like if any of the games from the GameCube are begging for a remake, it's this one. And you know why Nintendo's not going to do it? Because it would cannibalize DLC for the Three Houses.
No, I don't think so. I think they're done with Three Houses.
No,
DLC.
there's more.
We'll get to that.
There's DLC coming out right now.
Alongside the Switch HD.
It's coming. There's more DLC coming, Eric.
Really? I didn't know. I thought it was just Cindered Shadows, and that was it.
I think there's some coming out either May or June.
Okay, maybe.
But no, I actually think if they re-released Path of Radiance, it would just eat into new sales of Three Houses.
I don't know, because it's kind of because it's just so different from Three Houses. I wouldn't say it eat into it because like you have the Lagoos, you have like animal units in like this one, and it's more because like this is a very Path of Radiance is a very linear game. You go from chapter to chapter. There's no like exploration or like side quests or anything. It was just like you're following this graphic novel, this like visual novel essentially, and you're controlling the characters. And it's, yeah, I don't know if it would compete with Three Houses necessarily, but I know there's a lot of Fire Emblem fans who would love a remake of this.
Joke's on you. They're gonna make Guild School now. No.
Ike and Soren are at school now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You play as Soth. No.
Well, the next game.
All right. So listen, this was literally
the next game.
All right.
Yeah.
This was literally one of my favorite games of all time. Not just one of my favorite Fire Emblem games. One of my favorite games of all time. Path of Radiance. Yeah. And then they released Radiant Dawn, and actually, that is the first Fire Emblem game I did not buy the second I heard about it. Believe it or not.
Oh, I did. I bought it.
I know you did. I know you did. Because you had a Wii and I didn't.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. I was like, oh, man, this game is so great. Like, I was like, yeah.
Eric was drunk with Fire Emblem. This is so great.
I was like, yeah, Micaiah's squishy, no problem. Dawn Brigade, best arc. Yeah. But it still is, though. Dawn Brigade, I love. But yeah, Radiant Dawn was the direct sequel. And it was the first Fire Emblem game that I had played where there was like, this is a direct sequel. Mm-hmm. It immediately follows the events of the previous game. Because before that, my, conception was that it was all like, different worlds, or if they were in the same world, like Gaiden in the first game or Thracia and Genealogy, they were just like a side story like that was happening somewhere else. But this was like, no, like, remember all that stuff, like, about
this is literally right after.
Like, that's what this game is about now. Yeah. Like, it's not about Ike, but then it becomes
it's
about
Ike. Politics and these weird people.
It's about politics and racism against furries. Like, yeah it's a great game. Yeah.
The Banyan Emperor, we don't like you. You like Lewis. We don't like you.
And, like, Radiant Dawn, I really liked because I felt it improved a lot of the, like, gameplay stuff of Path of Radiance. Like you could do a lot more. There were more classes, so it didn't feel like, you were playing anything really different. But did have friends.
There was no reward for training the Dawn Brigade, though. You could literally just get through the game without.
We'll get into that. But, But yeah, there were definitely problems with Radiant Dawn, like gameplay wise. There were lots of problems, but and the other thing that unlike Path of Radiance, people could pick it up and understand it. But I had friends who picked up Radiant Dawn and were like, "Oh, Eric likes Fire Emblem," and then they're like, "What's happening? I don't understand what's happening in this story because it does not explain anything to you. It's just it explains a little bit about Micaiah and Soth and what they're doing and Dan and who Ike is kind of, but it's
You're totally right.
What's going on? It's just it drops you in. So it's if you didn't play Path of Radiance, you're kind of
So it's obviously not a good one to start with.
No,
definitely not. I would, if people have never played Fire Emblem before, I would actually recommend
7.
Three Houses or 7 or Awakening or something like that. But I would not recommend Radiant Dawn first.
I don't recommend Awakening.
I do. Well, we'll get to. I recommend Awakening as a first one, but
I recommend Sacred Stones are the first Fire Emblem 7.
I wouldn't recommend Sacred Stones because it sets up a false pretense. I think of what they'll be I can just go to the tower and grind. But no, you can't. And even in Three Houses, you're limited in grinding.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Not normal, but. Yeah, because people I think like Radiant Dawn because the artwork in Radiant Dawn is just a better Path of Radiance artwork, and the artwork's beautiful. Micaiah looks great. People are wow, I want to play as this cool looking mage girl, and then you go in and you're like, what's happened? Why are these people after me? What's going on?
The silver-haired maiden? Who's that?
Soth? Wait, who's Soth? I'm married to him. What's happening? Yeah.
And you know what the funniest thing is? There's actually tie-ins from the GameCube game to this game, and there's some extra ones in the Japanese version, and I'm like, why aren't these also in Nintendo? Why?
There were so many things because Radiant Dawn was such a direct sequel. It's almost it should have just been one massive game because your stats would transfer over if you beat Path of Radiance and uploaded your save into Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn, excuse me.
This was supposed to be a GameCube game.
Yeah, you got items too. Certain items would transfer from the GameCube to the Wii, and then you got special scenes. If you supported Ike and Soren, you got their special relationship ending if you did that. and it was like, wow, this would have been great as one game. And I hope if they do remake this,
it should be one game. If they remake it.
It'll be one game. Like I know Mangs did a leak video where he thinks the next one will be like, we'll get to like what Shadows of Valentia is, but it'll be like a Shadows of Radiance, where it's just like one game remake, remastered. Yeah. Because all the characters are in both games except for the Dawn Brigade and like a couple of the mid-game units.
Yeah, just forget the Dawn Brigade. No, I'm just kidding.
I like the Dawn. I mean, it's sad because like I didn't understand.
The story's pretty good.
It didn't understand that like I didn't understand how like the RNG worked as like a kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like my Edward got like RNG blessed, and he was like my best unit. I brought him into the tower at the end, and I was like, wow, Edward is so good. And I went online, and people were like, wow, Edward sucks. Like, he's so squishy. Like, he's not fast. And I didn't understand that I had just gotten ridiculously lucky when leveling him up.
Oh, man. But, you know, it's the funniest thing, and we just literally talked about this. If you didn't play Path of Radiance, this game story makes no sense.
No sense.
But which one do you think sold better?
Path of Radiance sold better, didn't it? Or did
no.
Radiant Dawn better?
Radiant, there was more copies in the wild of Radiant Dawn.
That's sad. That's probably why it went into like such a dearth. People were like, I don't know what's happening. Like, this gameplay is kind of fun, but like, I don't understand anything that's happening in this game.
So both of these games sold much better than their Japanese counterparts, but for some reason, Radiant Dawn sold more than Path of Radiance in both the US and Japan. I think it was because it was one of the first RPGs to release on the Wii. Because it came out in 2007. Like, the Wii is like brand new. Here's Radiant Dawn.
Yeah.
I think it was originally supposed to be like a last minute title for the GameCube, and it became like a launch title for the Wii essentially.
It's an interesting launch title too, and I don't think that did it any favors. No. But like, by this point though, people were really familiar, I think, with Fire Emblem, and I think maybe people were like, "Oh, Marth and Roy are going to be in this," and like, who's Micaiah? Who's Ike? What are these?
There's
people?
A blue-haired guy, but it's not Marth.
Oh, that's Marth. Wait, that's not Marth. His name's Ike. Who's that? What? Yeah.
Okay. So then after that,
yeah,
arguably like the worst remake they've ever done in a Fire Emblem game, because even Mystery of the Emblem's better. Shadow Dragon. And
which is sad because Shadow Dragon's gameplay, I would argue, is good. But
yeah, it's not bad. But the artwork's horrible.
The artwork is atrociously bad. It's ugly, and it's like, I didn't even buy it. I didn't buy it.
I have it. I own it.
This was the first one that I like didn't buy because I hated the art style. And then I heard that they didn't have supports in the game.
No.
And I was like, that's like half the reason I play these games. It's like for the characters, and it's just like, why would I play this? Like, this is dumb. Like,
this
it's
artwork
just like,
is worse than the
Marth,
90s
like,
cartoon.
It's like, I saw a meme I shared recently where it's like, I retweeted it, where it was like, what did the artist have against eyes? Because in all the eyes of the characters are really weird, and in the CGs, like, everyone's hair is like blocking out their eyes, and they just kind of look like this, and it's like, what did the artist have against eyes?
I also found the prologue to this game so strange. Have you played this or not?
Yes, I have played.
Oh, you have played. Okay.
This I've never beaten it.
The sacrificial unit thing in the prologue, I'm always like, this is weird. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, it's like, we're going to teach you about permadeath by giving you this unit that you're just going to murder and watch this poor man be killed. Yep. And you're just supposed to roll with it. And it's like, wow, like, that's messed up. It's dark.
Smart me said, oh, all those knights can't kill Jagend.
No, and then you sacrificed Jagend. So you sacrificed Jagend, like, the important one.
The first time I did it. Because I didn't look anything up.
What was that guy's name?
He was useless.
Yeah, he was useless. He had like white armor, and he was just like, "Wow, I'm so happy to be fighting alongside Marth." And it's like, this guy's gonna get.
This guy.
He's the red shirt from Star Trek.
For real, he was. And Chris wasn't the only person who did that. People would sacrifice like Jagin, or they would sacrifice like Sheeta or like Gordon or something. Yeah. And then they would be like, "Oh, I have this like useless red shirt that's just like along for the ride." It's like he had horrible growth. It was like very clear, like, this is the guy you're supposed to kill. But like, people killed like story important characters in that scene.
Yep. Oh,
It's
man.
cool that that's still an option though, so you're not forced to.
Yeah, you weren't
kill off.
forced to kill him, but it was funny because people would like kill like really important characters off, and they'd be like, "Oh," and the game would like new people would try it, and it would like punish you.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be like, because like if you killed Sheeta, I think the game just like craps all over Marth. It's like, wow, this like girl liked you, and she died because of you. Like you're a jerk. Like,
Well, not only that, so the best part, in my opinion, about this game is if you just like continuously let units die, the game just starts throwing like units at you throughout the game.
it was like
The
you're
amount
bad
of
at
units,
these.
it's like in the previous Fire Emblem games, like, all right, you get these 30 units. In Shadow Dragon, it's like, oh, every time somebody dies, let's just add more characters in, and the story just gets bigger and bigger. And it's like, here's some more characters, just don't let them die.
And going back to Radiant Dawn did have a bigger cast because Radiant Dawn has 80 playable characters, which is insane. That's just so crazy. But yeah, and it's like a meme now. People will like try and make the replacement units in Shadow Dragon good. Like Rad is a really common one. Like if you get Rutger, someone killed, you get Rad instead, and he's awful. But like people like, we're gonna make Rad like the best sword master ever. But yeah, it's a fun game to play, and it does have good gameplay. But yeah, the art and the story were just not great.
So how many worldwide sales do you think this game got?
Not a lot, I'm guessing.
500,000.
Okay, so that's not terrible. Like that's okay, yeah.
Right around.
It was
the other
actually
ones.
like one of the lowest selling US releases though, which is why it almost killed the franchise. Because
and it was so bad. The next game was Japan only. The next game because
they actually
it sold so badly.
they actually released the reason they released this is they expected it to sell well in Japan, and then they were like, oh, but if it sells well in Japan, it'll sell well in America. Well, it seems like with Fire Emblem, it's either like Japan does really well or US does really well, but not both. At least up to this point.
At least in this point, in the timeline of Earth Prime, it was not flipping around. Yeah.
So this game was the reason they didn't release the next game in the US, which was the second half of Mystery of the Emblem, and they titled it New Mystery of the Emblem, and they added a bunch of extra features that Americans would have liked, like online play, customizable character.
They brought supports back, and it was the first game where you had a customized. Well, unless you count Mark in Fire Emblem 7, it was the first time where you got to design a character. Chris was their name. It was like Kris, and it was like, this is you, and you can like make yourself however you want to be. You can make whatever class you want, and that was like something people were really like, oh man, that would have been cool if that was released in America.
I'm still mad this one didn't get released because I would have bought it.
Yeah, because like everyone who's played it, and I've never played it, I've never even emulated it, but like everyone who's played it is like, oh, it's actually pretty good. Like, and then we get to the game that saved the franchise, that not only saved it, but like it was a smash hit in terms of sales, and it introduced a lot of people to Fire Emblem.
Smash hit. I see what you did there.
Well, because they added some characters from it to Smash.
Yeah. Fire Emblem Awakening, regrettably so. I think it's okay.
Regrettably.
I think it's okay.
I'll be honest.
I like the fact this has a casual mode.
Yeah, and that was the thing that I think drew a lot of people into Awakening. And I remember the first time I played Awakening, I didn't like it. But then it grew on me, and I was like, oh, this is actually like a pretty good like game. And sure, because for me it was like, oh, it's kind of like an anime TV show in a sense. But like it's a good story, and it's like got some good characters, and it had great gameplay. Like, you know, you could customize pretty much anyone how you wanted them to be. It was engaging. It was really fun. And yeah, it introduced a lot of people to Fire Emblem.
I didn't feel like there was enough of a challenge in this game, to be totally honest with you.
Oh, well, you can play, if you've played Lunatic on it, it's like Lunatic Reverse Mode is actually brutally difficult, and it's so hard. I don't think I've ever beaten it. I just keep getting frustrated, and I'm like, this is too much.
Like, I finished Hector Hard Mode without losing a single character.
Yeah, I've done Hector Hard Mode, and that even now, like, I'm like, man, I can't believe I did this. Like, because Hector Hard Mode is so unfair, because everything is like a Pegasus Knight, and 1-2 range everything, which, you know, now I'm used to, and like now I know you always have to have 1-2 range weapons on everybody.
Pretty much.
Yeah, but Awakening also, it was the first game, I think, where it made the supports center stage, which I liked, actually. That was the thing I did like about Awakening, because
his feet are in the ground. Like, did you see that?
I did see that. Oh, the feet in Awakening, they were all pegs. Like, that was like a meme. Like, yeah, like it was. What was I saying about before the pegs?
The supports.
Oh, supports, yeah, because like in the other games, like Fire Emblem 7, even Sacred Stones, it does not teach you about supports. I discovered them by like accident. But like this, it was like that was the driving force of the game, was like the supports and the relationships between the characters, which it kind of always had been, at least for me in Fire Emblem. But this game, it was just like everyone's getting married, like you can marry whoever you want, like this is it, and you could pair up, and pairing up in Awakening was broken. It was, you could just wreck the entire game. Like there's like a meme, if you watch like Mangs and Mecha or other Fire Emblem YouTubers, they can call Awakening a Robin fest, because you can just make Robins so good that you don't really need any other unit.
I felt the same way about Fates though, but so after
We'll get to Fates.
So Awakening though, like people don't understand that weren't here before Awakening. Awakening was like, let's just throw everything but the kitchen sink in and see if people will buy this game. They literally put every character from previous Fire Emblem games in this some way or another, including characters that didn't even exist, like Priam. And and then they added like, oh, you wanted this character from the Japanese only releases? Whatever, you can have it. It's like, I don't even know who this character is. Like, why would I want this?
Was this the prototype for Heroes? Maybe.
maybe.
Oh no.
But like, I love Awakening now. Like, I stand by it. I think it's a great game. I think it's highly memorable.
I think the
like
story
Lucina,
is good. I'll give you the
Lucina
story.
is the story is awesome, and like Lucina is one of my favorite characters. On my work computer, I have a Lucina sticker. Like it, 9.6. I agree with that. Like IGN, like it's not a 10.
8.9.
It's good.
8.9.
8.9. All right, that's fair.
I would say 9.5.
There you go.
0.1.
So after this, Nintendo was like, all right, guys, we had a smash hit. Let's make another Fire Emblem game. And they're like, oh, well then let's be ambitious about it. So they decided to make a 3-route game.
Sort of like Pokemon.
Yeah, kind of.
Sort of like 3 houses. No. Anyways, so they decided to create this 3-route game, and they're like, okay, so we got 3 routes. There's going to be a decision point, and you're going to decide where you're going to go. And then Nintendo's like, yeah, but we're going to release this as 3 separate games. And Intelligent Systems is like, what? how is that going to work? So you could buy... They set it up where you had to buy 2 different cartridges, or you could buy 1 cartridge plus DLC for 2 other routes. Or if you were a super lucky guy like me, you managed to snag the special edition that had all 3 routes on 1 cartridge, which was Intelligent Systems. The grand design for this game was that you would have all 3 routes, and you would just make that decision in the beginning of the game.
But did it live up to the hype?
No.
No, exactly.
Like Birthright's the only route that makes sense from any type of morality.
Like Birthright's terrible. Like Conquest is so much better in gameplay perspective. Because like the thing that sort of annoyed me the most about Fates is they were like, wow, we're going to have a morally gray story where there's no good, no evil. But literally, Hoshido, they're wearing white and Nor's wearing black. And it's like, wow, I wonder who the good guys are.
And then the king is just such like a demon.
Oh, Garen is just like so evil. Like...
and how could you ever say, you know what, I'm just gonna side with this king guy, because you know.
Also like the character designs were so hit or miss in this game too, because like some characters are really well designed, like, and it comes down with like the avatar, like Corrin. Like I played as female Corrin because I thought she was hot, and like male Corrin looks like he rolled out of bed, and he's just like, which makes sense, because that's the other thing that bothered me about the story of this game is it's like, here's this like adopted teenager who knows nothing, and like, yeah, we're gonna give you command of an army. Oh, also everyone is in love with you for no reason, including your like half siblings. Like, okay, like, great,
you literally
thanks.
be with whoever you want. It's so weird.
Yeah, and like it's funny because like Chaz Aria LLC, another great Fire Emblem YouTuber, does these great series where he makes fun of the storytelling, where like, it's if you choose Hoshido and you go there and then the mom dies and everyone forgives you right away for accidentally killing her, except Takumi. And it's like, Takumi's right. Like, it's like, this person showed up, we don't know who they are, and they like killed our mom, but like Ryoma and like everyone's like, oh, it was an accident. Like, they clearly didn't mean that. Like, this story.
Can you imagine
is so
if after all that
stupid.
you just sided with Hoshido?
Well, you can. That's
I know,
the thing.
I know.
Like, you could.
We've forgiven you. I'm gonna go to King Garen.
Seriously, they're
Yeah,
like, wow.
forget you.
Or the meme where it's like that one map where it's like, Ryoma will wait patiently for his revenge. but
Oh my
only for
gosh, that part cracked
25
me up.
turns.
It just cracked me up.
Yeah, it's like the constant avatar worship was just so frustrating, and like the constant just like, oh, things happen and are solved immediately was frustrating, and the gimmicks were really annoying. Like the snow shoveling level to this day infuriates me, or the Metal Gear Emblem where you're trying to guess what door to go through, and if you choose the wrong one, you're just dead, and it's like, well, got to start the whole.
Actually, you know what cracked me up though is there's like, I can't remember which assassin almost dies, but if you're like not at an A rank support with him by like level 6, he's just like, all right, he's dead. Like, what? What? This is
Isn't that Kaze? Isn't that Kaze?
Yeah. It is. You're right. And it's like, if you don't rank up to an A support by the level before, he just dies in the in between.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way
like,
to save him.
Yeah, and the whole point is like, they were like, oh, we want to have a morally gray story, but if you choose like the Hoshido or the Nor route, it's like Azura dies at the end, and it's like, wow, if only we could have chosen a path that everyone could be happy in, and it's just like so like by revelation, but like, and that's
you're not wrong. That's the worst part. You're not wrong. Just by revelations.
Yeah, but like the thing is I think people liked Awakening's story better, and I think it was because of Fates that people went back to like Path of Radiance and were like, oh, we want a game with a good story, not this like lighthearted, anime adventure. And 9.4 is too high. What was IGN thinking?
8.5.
But like, I mean, it's fun, and it introduced people. It introduced like the sort of like, if you want to call them like the casual fan that did just kind of want like a lighthearted.
Fates was the best selling. Is the best selling Fire Emblem game.
Mm-hmm.
It's
like,
still the best selling Fire Emblem game.
Yeah, anime fans loved.
Three Houses has not passed this game yet.
Yet, I think it will, but we'll get.
I think it will too.
Yeah.
All right, so then they released arguably the best 3DS Fire Emblem game. Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valencia. This is my favorite 3DS Fire Emblem game, by far. Like, this game has, like, what they did was they took this guy. All right, and there's a whole backstory of this, but the guy who was in charge of producing this game played Fire Emblem Gaiden back when it came out with his dad every day until they finished it, and his dad passed away before he joined Intelligent Systems. Mm-hmm. So when he joined Intelligent Systems, he said, I want to remake this game that my dad and I played together every day when I was a kid. So he took on this passion project and helped them redo the whole game in a way that told the story more compassionately and deeply than ever before. And Fire Emblem Echoes has one of the best stories of any Fire Emblem game ever.
Yeah, the love story between Alm and Celica is really charming, and it's really well done. And yeah, I've only watched Let's Plays of it. I've not like played it, but it's so looks
worth
fantastic.
It. It's so worth it. I bought it for my brother, my brother-in-law, myself. I literally love this game. Not Fates. That's definitely
bring it up.
Bring it up,
and it's the first Fire Emblem game to have voice acting.
Yes, it was. Well, fully voice acted, because Awakening and Fates had like little quips the characters would say. But
like you'd be like, yeah, and then like the full sentence is like,
I leveled up. Like there was that meme for a while because like Corrin would just say like the dumbest thing. It's like, good job, or like I won.
This game actually had legit gray characters, unlike Fates. Like there's this character you want to hate. So you really want to hate this character who's like antagonizing you the whole game. Not Bowie. Bowie doesn't antagonize you.
Burkut. It's Burkut, and he's one of the best characters in the game because he was
so
like, you
good.
feel bad for him. You feel bad for him because
you feel even worse for his girlfriend.
Yeah, oh my god.
She just followed him into hell, essentially.
Yeah, his girlfriend who just like loves him so much, but like he is like feels overshadowed by like all like the characters were really good in this game, and like
It's so
I
worth
really
it.
liked just from watching this. I really liked Celica and Saber's relationship, like just the sort of like he becomes like a protector for her, and you know Alm like trying to lead this army. It's really good. Like the story's great. Just on that. That's all I know really.
If you've got a 3DS and you don't have this game, go buy it. That's where I'm at. Like this game must be purchased by anybody who has a 3DS and likes Fire Emblem. This game must be. It's a must play. Not a. Yeah, you should go get it. No, you must go play this game. It's
Is this
one
a
of the
relatively
best.
cheap game? Never looked at the price.
It's
of this
within $10 and $20. It definitely.
Like, should I get it today?
If you can, yeah, go ahead.
I don't. It's interesting because it's definitely like different in gameplay wise from a lot of Fire Emblem games. Like there's no
This is
weapon
where they
triangle.
they got a lot of their elements though.
Yeah.
For Three Houses came from a combination of this and Fates.
Yeah, absolutely. But like there was no weapon triangle, which also in Three Houses there's really not one. But also the Mila's turn wheel is Divine Pulse.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Was the magic as HP, like using your HP as magic, was also like really interesting.
And I think it was unbreakable weapons, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, Fates had unbreakable weapons, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, Fates didn't have breakable weapons because I was so happy that they came back in Three Houses that weapons had durability.
But this game was like a true HD, not HD, 3DSD, whatever the 3DS resolution is. It was like a perfect remake of a game from the 90s. Like I can't imagine making a better remake of a 90s game. Cough cough, Shadow Dragon sucks. Cough cough. But no, this game, it literally took like what was dungeon crawling in the 90s and modernized it really, really well. And then
I don't know if you've ever I don't know if you've ever played like Gaiden or like
I have.
the originals on NES.
Yep.
Like it's so clunky, but this was so polished. Yeah.
It's so worth it. And if you don't have it and you like Fire Emblem at all, this is worth it. This is definitely part of my top 5, which you'll get into on Wednesday. All right.
Yeah.
So then we get into since nobody cares about Fire Emblem Heroes, and nobody cares about Fire Emblem Warriors.
You know, I played Heroes.
And
for a
nobody
while.
cares about the
Yeah.
Fire Emblem Pop Star Persona remix game except me. So, Fire Emblem Three Houses is the last Fire Emblem game to come out recently.
It's my favorite one. Like, maybe it's recency bias, but I love this game.
This game looks really good.
It is really good. It's like, this is what I actually would recommend to someone who'd never played Fire Emblem before, because I think it's very approachable.
I don't know though,
it
because
actually delivers on like a great story, like morally gray characters, like a theme that is like war is bad, which is like really interesting because it's a very like war heavy game, but like so much customization, like exploration. I describe it to people as Game of Thrones meets Harry Potter meets anime, and it really
sold.
is that. Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I love this game, and the voice acting is beautiful. The score is incredible. I think this might be my favorite Fire Emblem score, and there are some good scores and good tracks in these games, but man, and the characters feel really, really real, with the exception of like one or two like really memeable characters like Ignatz or Raphael. But yeah, other than that, like every single character is like really, really well developed and really well thought out. And there's a reason people love this game and are making like fan art of this game constantly. Like it's really good, and you don't even need to go out and like buy a physical copy. You can go on your Switch, go to the Nintendo eStore and download it. And I
have a question.
Yeah.
So obviously you think it's a great game. I think Chris does as well, and most people agree with that sentiment. But do you think it would have sold as well as it has if the Switch hadn't sold as well?
Probably not. I would say that because like if the Switch wasn't as big of a success as it was, I'm not sure if it would have been such a success. Because like if it were say released on like the 3DS or something, I don't know if it would have been necessarily. Because like Nintendo and like Intelligent Systems were very smart to make this like a 2019 flagship title for the Switch, definitely.
I've never seen Nintendo push a Fire Emblem game as hard as they pushed this one.
Yes, they marketed this
so well, and like it paid off. Like it really did. Like, yeah, if you know nothing about Fire Emblem and like want a quick, easy game you can get your hands on, like now, this would be my pick. It's wonderful.
The way I describe this game is, I've played Fire Emblem before. It's like if you took Fates, Echoes, and Persona 4 Golden and mixed them all together.
Yeah, from a gameplay perspective, sure, absolutely. But then like a really good story. Although I haven't played Persona.
Whoa.
Persona's
got some great stories, man.
But like, Three Houses, man. It's so
I really
good.
feel like the Intelligent Systems and Atlas combination that created Tokyo Mirage Sessions is partially how this game came about.
I'm sure, like, because like it is inspired by Persona clearly with the whole calendar system.
Mm-hmm.
Like it clearly is inspired by that.
It takes like everything I love about the gameplay of Fire Emblem and everything I love about the social aspects of Persona, and like kind of goes, you got it all. There you go.
It works. It's like, it's fun, like having tea parties and like going fishing and like running around doing errands for people, and it's really fun. It's a great game. I love Three Houses. Highly recommend it.
So
it's addicting for sure too.
Since this is literally like the longest Monday episode we've ever done, I want to finish this off with a prediction from each of us. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Do we think Three Houses will surpass Fates and become the #1 selling Fire Emblem game? I'm gonna let Will go first, so we don't steal
it's
thunder.
super close. I mean, they're only off by a couple 100,000 right now, about 400,000. So I think it's gonna outsell. I don't have any doubt in my mind that that'll happen. I think a bigger question is going to be if they make another game for the Switch, will that one outsell Three Houses? And I don't know about that.
Probably not.
Yeah.
What about you, Eric?
Well, I think absolutely it will. I think the fact that it is available as like a e-download, like, is doing it lots of favors. Like, I think that will give it a longevity that like Fates perhaps didn't have. I think, people will pick it up as like their first Fire Emblem game. I think that will help sell. And kind of like Will, like, say if they do eventually remake like Path of Radiance, I don't think that will outsell this, but I think this will eventually outsell Fates for sure.
I think the Fates numbers are actually a little bit inflated because they're including Revelations purchases, they're including Conquest purchases and Birthright purchases. So like, you're literally combining 3 games into one. Three Houses is one game with everything in it.
Oh, well, then it's already outsold it. If you split that number by like 3, then yeah, Three Houses has already outsold it. But I understand why they would clump it together, like seeing as they wanted it to be like one big game. Yeah.
I think if Fates was actually one, like if all they sold was Fates Special Edition, they probably would have only sold about 1.5 to 2 million copies.
Yeah.
So I think it'll eke by Fates, but I think it might take most of the Switch's lifespan because most of the people that were going to buy Fire Emblem Three Houses have already bought Fire Emblem Three Houses. It's going to be a slow burn to hit 3 million sold, and it'll probably get there by like 2022, but it's going to take a while. Fire Emblem has basically been sold to everybody who is going to buy Fire Emblem at this point, except for like the holdouts and then the occasional person who's like, my friends play this, I'm going to go get it.
Yeah.
So I would say hard probably. I think it'll just barely surpass. It'll probably just barely surpass 3 million sales, I think, which would put it just slightly past Fates.
Yeah.
But Fates had, like I said, Fates had going for it is that people were going to buy multiple copies of Fates. It was how it was designed. And the user base by the time they released Fates was already like 60 plus million. When Fire Emblem Three Houses came out, I want to say the Switch had like 45 million units out. 40 to 45 million units. So there was a bigger install base of the 3DS when Fates came out than what the Switch had when Three Houses came out. So I think it most likely by a little bit will outsell Fates. I don't think there's anything major that's going to push Fire Emblem Three Houses much farther past where they're at. Like, there's nothing that's going to make Fire Emblem Three Houses magically hit 5 million sales. It's not going to happen.
No, yeah.
So I would say 3 million probably, and it'll probably just barely eke out past Fates.
Unless they release that dual screen Switch that they've been talking about, and they have a Fire Emblem edition.
Then it'll be Fire Emblem Fates Switch edition. No.
Oh boy.
No, they wouldn't do that. They'd probably put either it'll be Awakening or Path of Radiance, one or the other. But that's all I got. You guys got anything in conclusion to say for the 30th anniversary of Fire Emblem?
No, it's a great game series. If you've never tried it and you're like a fan of great stories in games and like any sort of turn-based strategy, like I would say like XCOM or Advanced Wars or something like that, like definitely check this out.
And as someone who's very new to this series, I'm enjoying it immensely. Even with the ridiculously long dialogue screens, I still really enjoy it. And I don't know, I am becoming attached to the characters, even though the games I've played so far have no voice recording. It's just dialogue. So
yeah.
And you already know Eric and I love it because we just spent a good hour dodging past Will's little tidbits.
Yep.
But
sorry, Will.
Oh, it's totally fine. Yeah.
The three houses. Here's what I'm going to say about three houses. The reason I have a hard time recommending three houses to people for Fire Emblem is because it's like what Persona 5 did to Persona. It modernized and revolutionized so many aspects of the game that if you play that one first, I have a feeling most people aren't going to go back and enjoy the older Fire Emblem games. So I'd rather somebody go play Echoes or go play Fire Emblem 7 or go play Path of Radiance before they play Three Houses, because it's so much harder to enjoy the older games with the less streamlined mechanics if you've already got the nice new streamlined mechanics. And there's such good stories to be had there. For the same reason that when I played Persona 4 Golden, which was like arguably the most streamlined Persona game, bar maybe Persona 5 when I played it, it was harder to go back and play 3 and play 2 and play the other half of 2, and then I can't even play Persona 1 anymore because it's just too hard to go back to that version of Persona. Eventually I will play it again, I promise, but it's so hard going back to that now at this point.
Sure, that's a totally fair point. I guess my thing is, it's like Three Houses will be the easiest for people to like get their hands on, because not everyone wants to like go out and emulate an older title or even seek down like if you have a Switch and that's all you have, like definitely do Three Houses.
I think it's hardcore time for Nintendo to start either re-releasing Path of Radiance, Radiant Dawn, or in Three Houses style, give me a proper Alib trilogy.
Oh, interesting.
I want Roy to Ellawood, but I also want Ellawood's father. Give me that prequel.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
And then you can do it just use the Three Houses styling, but don't give me. I don't need the school part. I don't need the school aspects. Just remake the Alib trilogy. Go get that fan game, that they made in the and
Immortal Sword. Yeah,
exactly.
That's a good one. But yeah, I hope that the next game won't be school focused, and I think they do enough different in each game that it won't be school focused. But because I feel like it would be played out if they did like another Fire Emblem School Edition again. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, as always, if you love Fire Emblem, any of these games are good. But as always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
I'm Eric.
And we will see you
on next CHRILLCAST.
Next CHRILLCAST.
Gonna talk about Mangs.